In the text of the Old Testament, it is described that God, often referred to as the Lord, instructs Abraham to leave his homeland and head to Canaan to establish a new community. Abraham, then 75 years old, accepts this divine direction and departs with his wife Sarah and his nephew Lot. After an extensive journey, they reach Canaan, a land designated for them and their heirs. However, this region was already inhabited by various Canaanite tribes, including the Hittites, Amorites, Hivites, Perizzites, and Jebusites, peoples mainly devoted to agriculture and trade. The Bible does not specify the exact date of Abraham's arrival in Canaan, but it is presumed to have been at the beginning of the second millennium BC. Abraham's interaction with the local inhabitants varied, fluctuating between moments of hospitality and hostility. Despite the obstacles, Abraham and his family established themselves in Canaan. At 99 years old, Abraham makes a covenant with the Lord, and his name is changed to Abraham. He dies at 175 years old and is buried in the cave of Machpelah, near the city of Hebron, located in present-day Jordan. Abraham had two sons, Isaac and Ishmael, considered ancestors of the Jews and Arabs, respectively. Isaac, the son of Sarah, and Ishmael, the son of Hagar, have different mothers. Isaac, despite Sarah's infertility, becomes the father of Jacob, who later receives the name Israel from the Lord. Jacob's 12 sons form the basis of the 12 tribes of Israel. Over time, these tribes develop until the arrival of Moses, a savior sent by God. Moses receives the divine mission to approach the Pharaoh and lead the Israelites out of Egypt. It is estimated that 600,000 men, plus women and children, left Egypt after 430 years of residence, departing from Ramesses to Sukkot. The Old Testament relates that Moses presented the Ten Commandments to the Israelites, with the first emphasizing the uniqueness of God and establishing the basis for Jewish monotheism. The Ark of the Covenant, containing the Ten Commandments, becomes a sacred and valuable symbol for the Jews. Under the leadership of Joshua, Moses' successor, the Israelites carry the Ark of the Covenant during the conquest of Canaan, facing idolatrous tribes. The Israelites' motto becomes, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. The struggle for possession of Canaan extends over generations, characterized by a lack of political centralization and the leadership of religious judges in times of war. The transition to a monarchy occurs with the appointment of Saul as king by Samuel, followed by David, who establishes the first dynasty of Israel and sets Jerusalem as its capital. David also defeats the Philistines, a people from the Aegean who settled in the strategic coastal region of Canaan, encompassing important cities like Gaza, Ashdod, Ashkelon, Ekron, and Gath. During a prolonged conflict between the Israelites and Philistines, there was a notable confrontation between David and the Philistine giant, Goliath. In this encounter, David achieved a significant victory both militarily and diplomatically. Under David's leadership, the Israeli domains extended from the Sinai Peninsula to the Euphrates River. One of David's grandest objectives was to build a splendid temple to house the Ark of the Covenant, which until then had been transported. However, the realization of this project fell to his son, Solomon. Solomon was responsible for the construction of the majestic temple in Jerusalem, which finally became the home of the Ark of the Covenant. During the reigns of David and Solomon, the Israelites experienced an era of prosperity, peace, and stability. However, after Solomon's death, the kingdom faced internal dissensions and external threats. Rehoboam, Solomon's son, became king, but his refusal to reduce the heavy taxes inherited from his father caused tensions. This led to the division of the unified kingdom into two, the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah, around 931 BC. The 10 northern tribes chose Jeroboam as their king, while the tribes of Judah and Benjamin, along with the Levites, remained under Rehoboam's rule. This division inaugurated a period of instability and conflicts, with both kingdoms experiencing alternations of prosperity and challenges. The northern kingdom established Samaria as its capital, while the southern kingdom maintained Jerusalem. In 722 BC, the Assyrians invaded Samaria, culminating in the gradual disappearance of the tribes of the northern kingdom, many of whom were exiled and assimilated, losing their cultural identities. They came to be known as the 10 Lost Tribes of Israel. Meanwhile, the southern kingdom maintained a strong Jewish presence, despite facing its own challenges. Cyrus the Great allowed the exiled Jews to return to Jerusalem and rebuild their temple, granting them autonomy within the Persian Empire, a gesture to ensure Jewish loyalty while respecting their traditions. The reconstruction of Solomon's temple, which had been in ruins for about 150 years, took 70 years, culminating in 458 BC under the leadership of Ezra, a priest, and his assistant Nehemiah. This moment marked the beginning of the Second Temple period in Jewish history. During this period, the Jews lived under foreign rule, with the exception of a brief period of independence under the Hasmonean kingdom, established after the Maccabean Revolt. The Maccabean Revolt was a Jewish response to the Seleucid Empire and its Hellenistic influence, especially under King Antiochus IV. The prohibition of Jewish practices and the desecration of the temple by Antiochus IV generated great dissatisfaction. The revolt was triggered by the Jewish priest Mattathias and his sons, the Maccabees, who managed to liberate Jerusalem and achieve success in a short time. In 164 BC, the celebration of Hanukkah took place in the purified temple, marking the removal of idols and pagan symbols. In 63 BC, the Roman general Pompey conquered Jerusalem, ending the Hasmonean reign and marking the end of the last independent Jewish monarchy. Since then, and with some exceptions, the region was under Roman rule. Initially, relations between the Romans and the Jews of Judea were relatively peaceful. However, tensions progressively increased, intensified by the execution of Jesus, a Jewish preacher seen by his followers as the Messiah. This event had repercussions both on Roman power and had specific implications for the Jewish community, exacerbating internal tensions between Jewish leaders and the growing movement of Jesus followers. In 66 AD, the Jews rose up in a major revolt, sparking the First Jewish-Roman War. The Roman military superiority faced Jewish resistance in a conflict that lasted 7 years. In 70 AD, the Roman Emperor Titus besieged and entered Jerusalem, resulting in the destruction of the city and the Second Temple. The conflict resulted in many Jews being killed, enslaved, or dispersed throughout the eastern Mediterranean and Mesopotamia, marking another exile for the Jewish people. The Arch of Titus in Rome, erected to celebrate this victory, displays relics looted from the temple, including the menorah. In 1949, Israel adopted the menorah as its emblem, symbolizing Jewish resilience throughout history. After the conquest of Jerusalem in 70 AD, the Romans founded the colony Aelia Capitolina on the ruins of the city. The First Jewish-Roman War ended in 73 AD. Roman policy resulted in a reduction of the Jewish population in the region, but there was still a significant number of Jews in and around Jerusalem. However, in 132 AD, the Bar Kokhba revolt erupted, marking a drastic change. A large temple of Jupiter was erected on the site of the former Jewish temple, and Jerusalem became a military garrison. The consequences of the revolt were catastrophic. Many cities and villages were destroyed, and the region of Judea was left desolate. In response to the ongoing conflicts, Emperor Hadrian renamed Judea to Syria Palestina, aiming to minimize the Jewish association with the region. Furthermore, the wars encouraged Jewish immigration. When Islamic armies took Palestine in 638, the Jewish population was estimated at about 150,000 people, but Jews were still forbidden from entering Jerusalem. Caliph Omar lifted this ban after conquering the city, allowing Jews to settle again in Jerusalem after 500 years, despite certain restrictions. Over time, these restrictions did not significantly limit Jewish freedoms. However, high taxes, especially on agricultural lands, led many Jews to migrate from rural areas to cities and, eventually, to leave the region. By the end of the 10th century, the Jewish population in Palestine had substantially decreased. During the Crusades, which began with the capture of Jerusalem in 1099, the Jews faced intense persecution and violence. Jewish communities in Europe, especially along the Rhine and Danube rivers, were devastated. This violence generated fears in the Jewish communities of the Middle East. Jews and Muslims united against the Crusaders, but suffered massive massacres after being defeated in Jerusalem. The Crusaders acted mercilessly, killing indiscriminately, including women and children of both Jewish and Muslim faiths. Surviving Jews in Jerusalem faced execution, forced conversion, or had to pay ransoms. Over the centuries, Jews have spread globally through migrations and exiles. The Ashkenazim settled in Germany and northeastern France, while the Sephardim went to Spain and Portugal. The Mizrahi Jews established themselves in Egypt, Iraq, and Yemen, and the Bukharan Jews in Central Asia and the Caucasus. During the Middle Ages, Jewish communities in Europe faced repeated pogroms, with their fate often depending on the fluctuating political dynamics. In the Renaissance, Jewish scholars played a vital role in transmitting ancient knowledge to the emerging intellectual societies of Europe. However, the Enlightenment brought new forms of anti-Semitism, forcing Jews to live in precarious existence across Europe. In the Ottoman Empire, which took control over Jerusalem in 1516, Jews experienced prosperity, holding influential positions in trade and administration. The Ottoman Empire welcomed Sephardic Jews expelled from Spain and Portugal in 1492, allowing them to flourish in cities like Istanbul, Thessaloniki, and Jerusalem, significantly contributing to the empire's culture and social structure. Prominent figures like David Ben-Gurion and Chaim Weizmann studied in Istanbul. Non-Muslims, including Jews, were required to pay the jizya tax and faced some restrictions. In 1860, Theodor Herzl, a Jewish journalist, argued for Jewish migration from Europe to Palestine to escape anti-Semitism and cultural assimilation. Publishing Der Judenstaat, the Jewish State, Herzl gained prominence in the Jewish world and organized the first Zionist Congress in Basel in 1897. Although initially unsuccessful, Herzl sought support for a Jewish state from leaders like German Emperor Wilhelm I and Ottoman Sultan Abdul Hamid II. The Zionist movement gained momentum, especially after the 1917 Balfour Declaration, which supported a national home for Jews in Palestine, then an Ottoman region with a small Jewish population. Interestingly, Arthur James Balfour, known for the Balfour Declaration, also supported the 1905 Aliens Act, aiming to limit the immigration of Russian Jews to Britain, and his advocacy for a Jewish homeland in Palestine was partly motivated by his desire to reduce the historic discomfort of Jews in Western civilization. After World War I, Palestine came under British administration under the Mandate system of the League of Nations. The British Mandate witnessed an increase in Jewish immigration, exacerbating conflicts with Arab populations and British authorities. The Arab Revolt of 1936 was a milestone in this period. In 1939, the resistance led to the issuance of the British White Paper, proposing a joint Arab-Jewish state. During the revolt, there were significant clashes, resulting in thousands of Arab casualties. Jewish paramilitary groups, like the Irgun, carried out numerous attacks on Palestinian and British targets. Notable incidents include the bombing of the King David Hotel in 1946. The Holocaust intensified the urgency of the Zionist movement. The genocide of 6 million Jews by Nazi Germany generated international support for the Jewish cause. In 1947, the UN approved a plan to partition Palestine into Jewish and Arab states, despite Arab opposition. In 1948, Israel declared independence, initiating the Arab-Israeli War. Israel faced subsequent conflicts, including the Suez Crisis in 1956, the Six-Day War in 1967, and the Yom Kippur War in 1973. The Oslo Accords in the 1990s brought hope, but a lasting peace agreement remained elusive. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict continues, with significant challenges arising from the occupation and expansion of settlements in the West Bank. This concludes our exploration of this complex history. If you found this informative and want more similar content, feel free to subscribe and share your views in the comments. Share this video with history enthusiasts. Your support helps bring these historical narratives to light. Thank you for joining us on this journey through time.